Let's get the party started on this Monday. What's going on, everybody? It is the morning afternoon live show coming to you live from Queens, New York. What's up, everybody? Yo! What up? How are all of you doing on this fine Monday? Afternoon, morning, evening, wherever, whatever it is, wherever you're hailing from. Right here in New York, it feels like Gotham City. It's been feeling like Gotham City for the last couple of weeks with all the rain and cold and clouds. I feel like we haven't seen the sun in a bit. Good thing I'm not Superman, or else I'd be extremely underpowered and weak. Because, you know, Superman relies on the sun for energy. But anyways, speaking of Superman, teaser trailer for James Gunn's Spider-Man coming out this Thursday, reports say. So I'm very excited for that. We finally will have a chance to get our first glimpse of the brand new Superman movie. Well, was I saying Spider-Man this whole time? I meant Superman. See, I have Spider-Man on the brain because we're going to be talking about Spider-Man a lot today. And Sony Pictures Spider-Man universe, or Spunpke, or Spimu. I don't know how you want to pronounce it or what they're calling it nowadays, but it's over. Sorry, Johnny, it's over. Because
you blew it!
As you could see with the results of Kraven from this past weekend, which I did see. I saw it. And I'll talk about it in a little bit. So we'll be talking about the box office weekend breakdown. What went right, what went wrong. There's a lot of wrong that happened at the weekend box office. We'll be talking about the latest rumors, news coming from Sony on their Spider-Man universe, what I think they should do, and what they're saying they're going to do. We'll be talking about all that stuff and any other news that is fit to read here on the broadcast. So again, I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Quick shout out to people in the chat already here. Ficon, what's going on, Ficon? I hope you're doing well. We'll get to talking about Skeleton Crew in a little bit too. Kevin Davis, yes, Sony Pictures had a decent year this year, but we're not talking about Sony as a studio. Will be fine. It's their Spider-Man properties that are suffering, and we'll be talking about that. Arnold's also in the chat. Also very nice to see you too, my man. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you had a great weekend. So really excited to talk about some of the stuff today. A lot to talk about, especially with a lot going on as far as content and media is concerned. Sorry to hear you had a rough day, Ficon. I hope by joining us and watching and or listening, you are having a better day. Maybe you're playing some Minecraft to kind of get your mind off of things. I hope you're doing whatever it is to get over the rough day that you had. So also don't forget, if you're watching live, please don't forget, hit that like button. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very little. All right. So I guess before we go into like the weekend box office and all this stuff like that, you know, I'll do a quick recap of what I've been up to the past week as far as like content's concerned, what I digested, what I intook, and all that, because there was a lot of stuff that I watched this past week, and you know, it's a wide range of stuff, right? Of course, there's Skeleton Crew, the newest episode of Skeleton Crew. There's the latest episode of Creature Commandos. I watched Saturday night's main event. If you're a wrestling fan, I remember watching that type of programming as a kid. Here in the United States, it used to pop up every Saturday. Like, was it every Saturday? It felt like it was almost every Saturday, or once a month on Saturday. For those of us who don't have cable, it was like a great time for us to actually see wrestling on broadcast television. So they brought that back. You know, interesting stuff. The Game Awards. I did watch the Game Awards. I didn't want to stream it because I didn't want to sit through that thing. I know a lot of people are saying, wow, this was like a great Game Awards. Maybe one of the best Game Awards ever. Um, I will say that yes, it was good, but there's still some stuff in there that bothers me. But it's getting better. Maybe it's just circumstances, but this year was definitely a little bit better than all the so many years of crap that we got from this Game Award. So I'll talk a little bit about that too. Of course, I saw three movies in the theaters this week. Interstellar 5555, four fives. That is, if you don't know what that is a Daft Punk anime that they put out a while ago, a long time ago. First time I had a chance to watch it in theater, so I'm very excited. I was very excited for that. Then, yes, I saw Kraven, and I saw that new Lord of the Rings animated movie, War of the Rohirrim. And I'll be talking about those movies in a little bit. Arnold, I'm sorry that you're sick. Just thinking about to buy the game Path of Exile 2. I know a lot of people are playing that game. A lot of people are excited for that game. It looks like old school Diablo or more modern Diablo in a way, right? Games like that for me are they're cool, but I don't have the patience for them usually. I've been trying to play Diablo 4 for the longest time, and I always start it, but then after a while I'll just stop and I'll move on to another game, and then I never go back to it. I think I've started twice already, and I just kind of not given up, but I always like, you know what, I'll get back to this a little later. So lucky for me, it's on Game Pass, so I didn't buy it or anything like that. But if I bought that game, that would have been like a waste of money, because for some reason, I find it interesting for like 30 minutes or an hour, and then after a while, I'm just like, all right, I'm kind of bored of this, or there's stuff happening that's not as intriguing that's keeping me wanting to play. I do want to play it, because it's not like I'm not having fun playing it. I do have fun playing it, but it's just something that I just can't. There's something there. I can't explain it. Coffee. I love my coffee. All right. Let's talk about some things right now. Let's start off with talking about Skeleton Crew. So episode 3 of Skeleton Crew came out, and it continues to be extremely charming. It is a very fun show, and I said this last week when I talked about the debut episodes. It feels like if I was 8 to 10 years old, this would be a show that I would love, because it just feels so fun. It has a lot of that kid charm that I remember watching like in the 80s, whenever you see young kids team up together to go on an adventure, and they experience larger than life events, moments in the universe or in time or in location that they probably never thought they would find themselves in. And they're trying to deal with these moments as adults would. It's always very intriguing to see that happening. And what was really cool about this episode is that we got to see more of the Jude Law character, right? And I said last week, he may have force powers, but he's not a Jedi. And they definitely played on that premise, right? Where he's not saying he is, but at the same time, he doesn't want to tell them, or he doesn't want to let the kids down with their enthusiasm and all that. Later on in the episode, he does say something along the lines of, I never really said I was a Jedi now. So that's one part of this show that is already extremely interesting, is that they're playing more with the concept that the Force is in everybody. And if you practice and hone in on it long enough, you can use the Force like Jude Law's character is using it, right? So you don't necessarily have to be a Jedi in order to use Force powers. Now, we already saw some of that in the Acolyte too, when you had different like covens of witches, and sectors of the universe that may or may not be using the Force, and that's why you have the Jedi like policing all that stuff right now. So even though Jude's character can use the Force, he he's keeping it very secret because maybe there's still something out there in the universe where it's very taboo, right? So that's one thing that I found interesting about the show. Another thing I find really interesting is the planet where the kids are from. The planet the kids are from appears to be an unknown planet, an unknown to like the rest of the universe. And in this episode, we learned a little bit more why that is. And it seems like it's being purposely hidden from the rest of the universe, whether it's the Republic doing it, maybe the Jedi Order decided that this is the way to go and all that. They come across this very cool owl character. Ficon, I agree. The owl character is very cool, very unique, very different. And as a character, I would love to see more of this owl character because it in a way, it's kind of like it's better than what's the name of that character, the one with the big goggles, from the sequel movies. Better than that character. Of course, nothing will ever beat Yoda, but we need kind of like that person to help guide us through this universe, right? We need that character that will guide us in understanding as to what's happening here. Yoda was a lot of that in the original movies. Maz Kanata, I think that's the name of the character with the big goggles, right? They attempted to make that character kind of as the conduit for things that are happening in the sequel movies. It didn't really work. But I feel like this owl character could be this in at least this show, right? Especially when you're dealing with kids who don't know anything of what's really happening around them or outside of their home planet. And because this planet has been hidden, it sounds like the civilians or the people living on the planet are also being shielded and guarded from everything that's happening outside of their small portion of the universe. The kids know nothing about what happened to Alderaan because they brought up Alderaan as surrounding planets near them. And apparently they don't know anything about the galactic war that happened, right? And that in itself is also very, very fascinating about this show, that the kids are so sheltered from everything that's really happening in the universe, and in a way that kind of makes them more pure and innocent, which is kind of cool. And I love the fact that, you know, they're learning more about Jude Law's character. He's a pirate. I mean, it's so simple and it's so transparent that he's that one guy that was ousted in the pirates thing at the beginning of the first episode. So he was like the former captain of this like pirate crew and all that kind of got ousted and stuff like that. So, you know, they're learning that he's like a scoundrel. He's not to be trusted. So they flip it on him. It's like, hey, if you want anything, especially if you want to ride on this ship, you have to follow our orders, right? So the kids are taking over, which I think is great. And I think that's a lot of fun. So the kids are kind of in charge. And I think that's really, really cute. I think it's really, really cute. So yeah, and then we saw some fights, some space battles with some X-Wings. The owl character called the X-Wing guys to come in because she doesn't trust Jude Law's character. We saw the kids man the turrets as if they're playing a video game. I thought that was very cool. Again, I'm sure the young generation that's watching it right now is having a field day with this show. Very much as I would imagine I would too. And as an adult, I find it charming. I find it very cute. Nothing that you have to sit down and overanalyze or anything like that. But they leave a little bit cool Easter eggs and little snippets of mystery that kind of connect it to the universe that we all know. And that's what I find very intriguing and all that. So I was wrong. I thought the Daniels were going to direct that episode. They didn't. I believe the director of this episode, he was the director of A24 movies like The Green Knight, Ghost Story. I loved Ghost Story. Ghost Story is one of A24's best movies. You should check it out if you haven't done so. Green Knight is all right. I mean, main character jizzed on himself. That's the one thing I remember from that movie. The rest of it was bleh. And maybe that's just me. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know who's directing the next episode. I didn't look it up, but I still find a lot of entertainment in this show, and I enjoy it. So I hope you guys are enjoying it too if you're watching. Let me quickly catch up with the chat. Ficon rates the episode a 7. Al was very cool. The 9 planets that were destroyed. They also talking about the Old Republic. Yeah, it's those things that I find extremely fascinating, that they're giving us like little snippets and tidbits of the universe that we know and we want to learn more about, but they're not like overindulging in it, and they're not like overbearing us with all of that stuff. Just little bits here and there to keep the story going and to keep the mystery and the intrigue going, and I like that a lot. I really do. But if you're like a younger kid watching the show, you don't have to necessarily pay attention to all of that stuff, because it's just like quick mentions here and there, quick things here and there, you know, especially when they rolled out that old school map, the drawings of how that portion of the universe kind of looked like before. I thought that was pretty cool. Arnold saying he got a message today from company where I had an interview. He said that chances are 99% that you'll get the job. Let's see if they call me this week, sign the contract. We will see. Arnold, we are all crossing our fingers and wishing you luck that you land your job this week. Everyone, please, please. I don't know is there a crossing fingers emoji? But if there is one, why don't you spam the chat with that for Arnold and wish him luck on his, hopefully he'll land his job soon. Ficon saying, and what Sith was destroying planets in the Old Republic? Darth Nihilus. Crazy theory, but it would be so cool. That would be cool. And I don't know if Disney and Lucasfilm have learned their lesson from the Acolyte or anything like that, with a reveal that may end up becoming nothing at the end. But we'll see. We'll see what happened. But that would be pretty cool. Jester has returned. Jester, always a pleasure seeing you. Kevin Davies saying Star Wars will have a comeback in theaters and on Disney Plus. We'll see. We'll see. I think this show, I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about this show. And I don't know what the ratings are looking like right now, but we'll see. We'll see. They have a lot to consider, and they have a big mountain to climb when it comes to winning back a lot of the fan base, especially when it comes to watching movies back in the theater. If The Mandalorian and Grogu knock it out of the park, then for sure that is something that is going to resonate with Disney and Lucasfilm, and you'll see a lot more production coming out soon. So, Ficon saying the Daniels is next episode.
Best man in the world.
Arnold, thank you so much, man. Arnold with the €2 super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Well, you know what? You're one of the best guys that I've met on this thing. I'll say that. Everyone here, I enjoy doing all of this because of you guys, because of the community, because of the conversations we have. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Daniels is in the next episode. Okay. So the only thing I heard about the next episode, that it's going to focus more on the Nice Noodles character, the young boy. I think it's going to focus a lot on that. So if you put that with the Daniels directing an episode like that, I find that extremely intriguing. I really do. So we'll see what happens. Ficon's just started watching The Outsider, and so far it's great. The Outsider, what is that, Ficon? I'm not sure I'm familiar with that show. But let us know in the comments what that is, and what you're liking about it. So yeah. If I were to rate this episode, I would give it probably a 3 out of 5. You know, I don't do half-star ratings, but if I did, it'd probably be 3.5. You know, it's nothing that's like outstanding, but it's still very entertaining. I'm not bored of the show yet. So I am looking forward to seeing what the next episode will bring us, So that's that. Next, let's pivot. Let's go to Creature Commandos. And this was a new episode. This episode focused a lot on GI Robot, I believe it is. I think that's the character name. The Tin Man, as he's like very fondly referred to. This particular episode, if you're a fan of the Invincible animated show, this is definitely one of those type of episodes where there was so much violence and gore in it, but in a way that I found myself laughing at it because of how crazy absurd it is and over the top. But I had a lot of fun with this episode. We learned a lot more about GI Robot, about his time serving with Sergeant Rock, another famous DC character. And I remember way back in the day when I was reading comic books and I was collecting comic books, Sergeant Rock was one of those comic books that I always saw at the shop, and I saw a lot of people liking that series. But when I look at it, I was like, I don't want to read a story about army guys and all that. Like, if I wanted something like that, I'll just read G.I. Joe, So it wasn't anything that I really got into, but I was very aware of who Sergeant Rock is. And the rumor right now is going around that Daniel Craig is expected to probably get cast for a role as Sergeant Rock in a James Gunn type movie. We'll see. But it was really cool to see the backstory of G.I. Robot, his time in World War II, fighting against the Nazis, and how that he kept like going back and forth between his memories of, serving, and then his life after the service, and how he never really fully adjusted to regular life. He always has it in his mind that Nazis are everywhere. A very amazing segment of he ended up in an army surplus store, and some guy just bought him because he wanted a companion, and it turned out that that guy was involved in like a neo-Nazi group. And very much like that church scene in Kingsman, the very, very first Kingsman. He just went ham on these guys, and I just thought it was really funny. The guy was voiced by Michael Rooker, which was also great, another James Gunn guy. And it was a fun episode. It was really cool, and it we didn't progress much in the story, not yet. I think the next episode we will. But like I mentioned last week, it feels like every episode we're gonna get like kind of like a focus on a particular character. Next episode, it looks like they're gonna be focusing on Weasel. This one was definitely focused on GI Robot. The ending of this episode was brutal as hell, man. When they got Cersei, when they finally captured Cersei, and first of all, Weasel was going to town on her, just like ripping her to shreds. Then you got the radioactive guy, like basically melting her face. Crazy stuff. Really, really banana shit stuff. But I find it still very entertaining. Again, James Gunn knows how to tell a story, knows how to develop characters very well, especially in ensembles. He finds a way to keep us very intrigued with every member of that group, because of the way he builds the characters and how he incorporates the backstories of these characters into what we're watching and into like future iterations of these characters. So I don't want to like toot James Gunn's horn too much, but this is giving me a little hope that he's going to do justice, no pun intended, to the upcoming DC universe that he's working on. That's why I'm really looking forward to seeing what we're going to see with Superman coming this Thursday. And if Superman, again, does really well, then I think a lot of people are going to be on board with the DC train, maybe even more so than Marvel. DC has that opportunity right now to capture all the attention and to grab those people who are tired of superhero films and the genre and kind of reinvigorate it, right? He has that chance right now. We'll see, because I'm also seeing very lukewarm reception to the upcoming Captain America movie that's coming out, oddly enough, on Valentine's Day next year. So it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen with all of this moving forward. But I'm enjoying Creature Commandos. I think it's pretty cool. I don't know if any of you guys are watching it, but I highly recommend you guys check it out if you haven't yet. Arnold saying thank you. Well, no, thank you. That's definitely what I want to say here. Kevin Davis, if people expecting Sonic 3 to outperform the two previous films at the box office, y'all going to be disappointed. A Quiet Place Day 1 couldn't outperform even with good reviews. I do agree to a certain point too. One thing Sonic 3 has going for it is that it's going to be released around the holiday. And just very much like we saw with Moana, because it was released during Thanksgiving, it killed it at the box office. It got so much people wanting to go see it. Yes, it's also a beloved franchise property. And Moana 2 definitely shows that it doesn't have to be a great movie in order to kill at the box office. I think there's going to be a lot of kids who are very much excited for this movie to come out. I agree. I don't think it's going to outperform, but it's going to do extremely well. If anything, it might match or equal the last performance of Sonic 2. We'll see. I know AKB may not be here. Maybe he's watching in the background, but he predicted that Sonic 3 was going to pull in an astronomical amount of money over the live action Mufasa. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens when that comes out. Vicon saying The Outsiders, it starts off with a child getting unalived, and then they have to find a guy that unalived him, but behind the scenes, it's someone supernatural. The main character is a police detective, and he's trying to solve the mystery. It's really exciting. Oh, that does sound interesting. Are you watching it on a platform? I'm curious. Jester saying I'm going to go see Sonic 3 this Sunday. So Jester, I feel like you're the perfect person to talk on this then. Like, how excited are you for Sonic 3? And do you have high hopes for it? And how much have you enjoyed the last two Sonic movies? I'm just curious. Let us know. Because like I've said this before, I thought the very first Sonic movie was great. I loved the human interaction and the chemistry Sonic had with the human characters. And I thought overall it was like a fun movie to watch from beginning to end. In the second part, they veered a lot away from that. They removed a lot of the human interaction, and that chemistry was lost because now we were focused on Sonic and Knuckles. Sonic and Tails. Sorry. And when that happened, when that switch happened, and you could tell like the human interaction, the human parts were kind of phoned in and felt like it was very much done in front of green screen the whole time. Because of that disconnect, I felt disconnected. And for me, it wasn't as good as the first one. But you wouldn't know that in the theater I was watching it in because everyone in attendance, mostly young kids, loved the hell out of that movie. And of course, when the big shadow reveal happened at the end credits, everyone lost their ever-loving mind. So I'm sure that audience that was going nuts for that is eagerly anticipating Sonic 3 coming out. And I'm sure that's going to be the audiences that are going to be loving the new Sonic when that comes out. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be really interesting to see overall. Vicon saying the show's on HBO Max. Okay, you know what? It's on my radar now. I may check it out. So I appreciate you letting us know about that. Jester saying, I haven't really been a fan of the Sonic movies since I thought the comedy was just a bit too much. But I do believe that Keanu Reeves will bring in an amazing performance and will really ground the movie. We'll see. I hope so. This one definitely I definitely feel like they're reaching for it on this one with not only introducing a new villain, but you got kind of two Eggmans now in the movie, right? So we'll see. We'll see. Did you listen to Yes? Oh, I didn't. Oh man, you just reminded me. Damn it. I totally forgot. I wrote it down and everything. I will try to check it out this week, Vicon, and I'll let you know next time. Jester is saying, because I do believe that the Sonic films have needed to be a little bit more serious. I agree with that, but I think because of the audience they're trying to reach, it's going to be hard for them to do that. Even though like this one looks like it's going to be a little bit more serious, I'm sure they're going to find a way to make it funny and all that, and to make it kind of comical, because again, younger generation, that's kind of what they eat up, right? So, which kind of reminded me of this last episode of Skeleton Crew. I felt like this recent episode of Skeleton Crew was a little bit more. They had a little bit more comedy in it, which I didn't mind so much, but I could imagine how a lot of the haters out there were probably like nitpicking at, oh, they're trying to be too funny, and it's Star Wars humor. That's why I didn't mind it so much. It was the Star Wars humor, so I didn't mind that at all. So yeah. So that was Skeleton Crew, and then, you know, again, I watch wrestling on occasion, and Saturday night's main event was fun to watch. Nice little throwback to how these things are. They had so much matches in a 2-hour span with commercials. Nothing outlandish there, but fun stuff. Fun stuff. I always enjoy seeing Io Sky doing her crazy shit. And the whole rivalry between Cody Rhodes and, you know, all that shit that's happening right now. So it was fun. It was cool. I'm very curious again what's going to happen when they move over to Netflix, because Netflix, I don't think they're capable of managing and maintaining live events, and if they're expecting this to go live every Monday night for 2 to 3 hours, they're going to have a lot of problems with that. They're really going to have a lot of problems with that. I'll go into like my movie reviews after I review the box office breakdown and all that. So, but otherwise, I've also been playing more of Marvel Rivals, but Indiana Jones. I can't get enough of that game. For you guys who haven't had a chance to play it yet, and you're looking forward to playing it, I'm so excited for you, because you have something amazing coming your way. It plays so much like you're in the movies. It's crazy good how you know, it dawned on me when I was playing it recently. For the longest time, we never really got any Indiana Jones games, but we got a lot of Tomb Raider games, right? And we were always calling the Tomb Raider franchise kind of like the female Indiana Jones. We were calling that for a very long time, ever since its inception on the Sony PlayStation, the very first iteration. And it was fine and cool. And, you know, since that's all we got, we really enjoyed it. You look at the games nowadays and you try to go back to it, and it's like, oh, these games don't really hold up, you know? This is what I've been wanting in an Indiana Jones game, because when it comes to the moments where you're solving the puzzles, it feels very immersive, and very much just like how he solves puzzles in the original movies. You go through those same steps, and it has the same tone, and it has that same feel of excitement. You know, just like, is he going to solve it? Am I going to be able to solve it? Am I going to be able to figure this out? Look at all of these pieces, and how does it all tie together? It's just so fascinating, and just very, very fun to play through. So I'm having so much fun with that. Yes, Jester, I will be talking about the Malcolm in the Middle news item when I get to the news portion of the show, which is always usually later on in the show. So, but thank you for the reminder there. So, without further ado, as we say here, let's go into the box office breakdown from this past weekend. As always, I review the weekend box office, and I go to my favorite site, thenumbers.com, to review all of the data with you guys. So, no surprise that Moana 2 remains supreme, king supreme, riding that wave of popularity. Moana 2 came in number 1 again with 26.6 million domestically over the weekend, with a total, let's just break this all down, shall we? Holy cow, this movie is gearing up to hit $1 billion. Domestically, 337.5 million. Internationally, a little bit more than that, 379.5, with a worldwide box office total of $717 million. I said this last week, I'll say it again. Bob Iger was right. You got to make this into a movie, and they did, even though the movie is terrible in my opinion. Well, I shouldn't say terrible. It's just not great. For freaking it's blowing the socks off of the box office right now. And I said it was going to have legs because we are still in the holiday season. During Christmas week, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are still going to go see this, maybe twice, 3 times. Shut the kids up, get them out of the house. Let's go watch Moana 2 again. Even though the kids of my friend, my close friend, hated this movie, they're going to do that. So that's still doing really well. Wicked also still doing really well. In second place again, second week in a row, $22.6 million domestically over the weekend, $359 million domestically so far. Internationally, 166. Worldwide total, $525.3 million. This is still performing really well for the type of movie that it is. And yeah, this is going to go down in history as one of the best performing musical movies ever made. We'll see what happens when Wicked 2 comes out. But I know there's like a big campaign going around now saying, don't spoil Wicked 2. Don't spoil Wicked 2. Listen, the book has been out forever. The musical itself has been out forever. If you haven't seen it or you're not aware of it, sorry. But people are going to talk about it because people are very excited about it. I'm not going to talk about it because I'll be honest with you. I saw the musical a very long time ago. I hardly remember it. I know I enjoyed it and I enjoyed Wicked. So we'll see what happens when Wicked 2 comes out. Debuting in third place, Kraven the Hunter. Sony's latest disaster film from the Spider-Man universe. $11 million domestically over the weekend, making it one of the worst performing Spider-Man movies, along with other movies like Morbius and Madam Web. What a disaster this thing is. 15 million internationally. Not even the international box office can save this movie, with a worldwide total of $26 million. And let's see which countries have had this movie. All right. So the UK numbers aren't in yet. China, Korea, their numbers aren't in yet. Let's see. China, it opened up actually 2 days ago. So we probably just don't have the receipts for that yet. In the UK, let's see. It also opened up this past weekend. So we probably don't have the receipts yet for that either. So a lot of late stuff, a lot of late reporting, but it's not looking good for this movie. It's not looking good for Sony Pictures as far as Spider-Man's concerned. Let me quickly look at Kraven the Hunter budget. Let's see. They're estimating that the budget for this movie is around $110 million. $110 million and only pulled in $26 million opening weekend. Woof. What a disaster this movie is. Coming in fourth place is Gladiator 2. So at least Kraven beat Gladiator 2 in its, fourth week out? $7.6 million over the weekend, 145.7 domestically overall. Huge international number, 252.5, with a worldwide box office of $398.3 million. Gladiator 2 still performing real well. Another disaster, in my opinion, is Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. This is a big loss, I think, for Warner Brothers. I think they were really hoping that this movie was going to bring a lot of people to theaters to watch it. Unfortunately, that was not the case. $4.5 million domestically over the weekend. Internationally, only $5.7 million so far, with an overall worldwide box office of $10.2 million. I'm not going to give my full review on this yet. After I'm done with this, I will. But I will say this just right now. This should have stayed on Max. They should have just released this directly on Max, and I think it would have been just fine. It was a huge mistake, in my opinion, to release this in theaters. I know what they were trying to do. I see what they were trying to do. It was the wrong move, in my opinion. So, and I think the box office totals are showing why that was a wrong move. Coming in sixth place is Red One, even though it is available now on premium on demand. Still pulling in $4.2 million domestically over the weekend, $92.4 million overall domestic, international 82, with a worldwide box office of $175 million. I guess good for them. I based on the budget, not really so much so, but it's still pulling in numbers at the box office, which is interesting. This is another interesting story here. Interstellar, the re-release of the anniversary of Interstellar. I believe it's a 10-year anniversary. From what I read in an article from this morning, it is the highest performing IMAX movie for a movie that has been re-released in theaters, and deservingly so. So far, it pulled in domestically $3.6 million since its re-release in theaters. Now, don't believe this domestic total because it's just adding to its original theatrical run. But it's definitely adding more money to its overall theatrical run. But a lot of people are going out to watch Interstellar, especially on IMAX screens. I think IMAX is the perfect medium to watch a movie like this because the visuals are outstanding. The sound is crazy. The soundtrack, Hans Zimmer with its amazing soundtrack. Love this movie. I've said this over and over again. Interstellar remains one of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies ever made. And I'm glad a lot of people are really enjoying the re-release of this. In 8th place, Pushpa, The Rule Part 2. Still don't know what the movie is. $1.6 million over the weekend, $13 million overall domestically. In 9th place, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever from Lionsgate, $1.2 million, $36.6 million domestically overall. Again, if you don't know what this movie is, it is an adaptation of a very famous Christmas storybook from way back in the day. And rounding out the top 10 is Queer, the latest A24 movie starring Daniel Craig. I got a chance to see this at New York Film Festival. It's good, but it's not one of my favorite Luca Guadagnino movies that he's ever directed. But Daniel Craig is amazing in this. $790,000. It's only playing at 460 theaters. And plus, it's a very independent A24 movie, so it's not expected to do big business here. $1.9 million overall domestically there. So, and right outside you see like Y2K, The Order, Flow, Werewolves, Venom. Venom is still in some theaters out there. Very, very interesting stuff. Just to show you how bad, Kraven was performing. And I think the studios were aware, not studios, the movie theaters were aware that there wasn't going to be a lot of business for Kraven. I saw reports of theaters ditching the movie completely, removing the movie from its rotation, and just sticking to Wicked, Moana 2, Gladiator 2, and some other, I think a lot of theaters were expecting Lord of the Rings to do really well. They learned that it didn't. My theater that I go to, the theater that I choose to always go and watch my movies at, they did something extremely interesting that I've never seen them do before. If you check the show times a day before, you would see regular showings throughout the day, just like any other movie. Day of, for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they got rid of all the daytime shows of Kraven. And they only showed Kraven in 2 showings at night. So for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they only limited Kraven showings to 2 per night. While you could see all day, if you went there at 2 in the afternoon, you could see Wicked, you could see Moana 2, you could see Gladiator, you could see the new Lord of the Rings. You had your pick of the litter for the most popular movies out there. But Kraven, you better make sure you have time for 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. because those are the only times you got to see this movie if you went to my theater that I go to, which I found very, very interesting and very telling. And that just kind of shows you how bad, this movie was performing. So I went to see it. And this will be my review of Kraven. I'll get rid of this weekend box office breakdown. But it's eventually going to tie into my next subject that I want to talk about. So I will say this. I had no expectations for this movie. But Kraven, I've said before, has always been one of my favorite Spider-Man villains in the comic books. I love the arc of when he debuted. Basically he's hunting down Spider-Man, big game hunter, one of the best in the world. Sometimes he is an assassin for hire, all this stuff, right? And I loved it because he was also a very grounded like character too. Didn't necessarily have any special powers or anything like that. He was just very good at tracking and hunting, right? And he was very dedicated, almost to a fault, right? That's why it kind of drove him mad. And I believe in the comic books, he eventually unalived himself, right? The one thing I hate that studios do is, in order to make this character more enticing and more exciting, is that they have to add in a supernatural element to this. And if you looked at all of the Spider Universe movies from Sony, Morbius, Madam Web, right? Even little bits of Venom, they always had some sort of, outer realm, out of this universe, supernatural element in all of this stuff. And the way they treated the Kraven character was very similar. He got his senses, his heightened senses, because he was infused with lion DNA and this mysterious potion from the jungle or from a grandma of a certain individual that is like an old family recipe or some nonsense like that. And that's how his blood and body was infused with like all these crazy supernatural abilities. He had the ability to see at night or see from long distances. He had heightened hearing and heightened smell. He can move like an animal, he could climb walls, or at least to the point where he can jump from ledge to ledge without breaking a sweat. He can run on all fours when he has to. Makes him very good at dodging bullets and everything. It's so absurd with the lengths they have to go in order to make this character larger than life, instead of making him just a simple grounded character and building off of that and writing a story off of that. And that's one of the major things I found extremely disappointing about this movie. If there's one thing good I will say, is that Andrew Taylor Johnson, is it Andrew? I'm forgetting the guy's name. Kraven. It's Aaron. Sorry. Why did I call him Andrew? Aaron Taylor Johnson, just like how Tom Hardy does in the Venom movies, he acts his ass off. He really does. And he goes all in on this character. He doesn't phone it in. And if you watch a lot of the movies that he does, he always does his best in it, I think, in my opinion. When he showed up in, obviously when he did the Kick-Ass movies, I thought he was really good in those movies, right? When he showed up in Godzilla, I thought he was okay. I just don't think he was directed right. But then he showed up on like movies like Bullet Train and all these other movies. And I thought, there's nothing wrong with this guy. He acts his ass off. When he was Quicksilver in the Marvel Universe, I believed it. I'm like, all right, this guy's Quicksilver. Killed him off way too soon, in my opinion. But I would have loved to see more of this character. And when Aaron Taylor Johnson was doing interviews and press for Kraven, he was begging and pleading the audience, give us a chance, give this movie a chance. And one of his quotes was, and you're going to want to see more of this character. At the end of the movie, he's right. I did want to see more of this character, because out of all the Spider villain characters that they wanted to make movies off of, this one was not the worst. It wasn't great, but it wasn't the worst. But what made me at least want to see more of him was Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance. But another thing that I don't like that they do with these movies is they try to make this person likable. He's not supposed to be a likable guy. He kills people. Sometimes because he wants to, or because he's out for revenge. But later on in the comics, you learn that he's also a killer for hire, What's all going on, Girl of Fantasy? I see you in the chat. It's been a long time, man. I hope you're doing well. Nice of you to join in and tune in. He's a ruthless individual. His father was ruthless, and they do portray that in the movie. And his brother turns into a very unlikable character too, right? But in this movie, they made him like he's the hero. Like he's the guy you should be rooting for. Him and Calypso, played by Ariana DeBose. But they're not supposed to be likable people. You know, and this is a trend that worked at one point when Disney was turning villains into likable characters like Maleficent, right? Or the 101 Dalmatians, Cruella de Vil. They tried to make her likable. You know, and in certain aspects it can work, but it doesn't work for this. I didn't like Morbius in the movie. I hated the character and I hated the movie. Madam Web, she's kind of in between the lines there. She's good and bad at times, depending on how you look at it. I could care less. Or I couldn't care less. Venom. I like the chemistry between Venom and Tom Hardy in the first movie, and then you lost me everywhere else. It's just, it is so disastrous as to what's happening with these movies. And this movie, even though it's not their worst, in my opinion, still wasn't great. Ariana DeBose, who plays Calypso, I felt like, you know, a lot of people like to use the term now, very AI. Like, oh, you know, that sounded like it was made out of AI. Or that looked like AI created that. Her performance felt like an AI character. I felt like she didn't know where she was. I felt like she was directed to be very aloof. No emotion in most of her scenes. And her dialogue was and felt very AI. You know, it just, why was she in this movie? And I think Ariana DeBose is a fantastic performer. I loved her in West Side Story. And on what I've seen clips of her on Broadway and on stage, fantastic. She does not fit in a movie like this. I think this was just bad casting. Because she was just, every time she was on screen, it was just very bland. And she looked like she was always in a Chanel commercial. They had her wearing like fancy clothes all the time and trying to look all sexy. Her hair is always all done right. You know, and then of course there's one moment in the movie where she kills off one of the two villains in there. Of course, they have to be like two villains in everything, right? And she kills one of them, gets this villain off of Kraven, and they give her the one-liner, right? Count this bitch or whatever the shit is. You know, they try to give her like an Arnold line, and people in the audience laughed. I rolled my eyes. I was like, oh God, really? It was just so dull. So dull. You had Fred Hetchinger in this movie. Fred's very busy. He was in Gladiator 2. Now he's in this movie. I thought, again, another person who acted really well in this movie, along with Aaron Taylor Johnson, but was not given much to do. Yeah, and you could tell that they really was looking to go further with this franchise, because they had to have this big reveal. And if you are familiar with the comics, then you know exactly what's coming. Because the stepbrother of Kraven ends up becoming the Chameleon. And, you know, they kind of hinted on it here and there. Like, he's very good at impersonations. He can impersonate their dad very well. And then all of a sudden he's like, you know what? I decided to go to New York, see a doctor, and he helped me. And now I can be whoever I want to be. I'm a chameleon. I can look like you. Oh, if you could see your face right now. Ha ha. Wow. Really? Like, what are they doing here? And it just was like really, really like off-putting. You had Russell Crowe, and I thought Russell Crowe did really well. I love how in his later years in life, he's looking more and more like Orson Welles. And if that is his shtick, if that is what he's trying to do, well, it's working because he looks like Orson Welles. But I thought he was good. Russell Crowe is a veteran actor. You know, he didn't phone it in. He did a good job. And then you had Alessandro Nivola, who played the Rhino. A waste of a character. Spoiler alert, he dies at the end. So there goes that character. You know, the other villain that was killed by Calypso was the Foreigner. I have no idea who it is, but he has another character in this universe that can like control people's minds and all that stuff. As if we don't have enough of those characters. Yeah, this movie wasn't great. It wasn't good. And I knew it wasn't going to be good because they spent 30 minutes of the movie with just backstory. And you followed Kraven and his brother when they were like teenagers. And we had 30 minutes of this. 30 minutes after already seeing like a crazy action sequence to start the movie with. And then he gets on a plane and he sits there and then all of a sudden fade to black 16 years ago. And for the next 30 minutes, we get nothing but origin. And then when that was done, fade to black, and then present day, it's just like, wow, that was bad. That was a lot. And this is like a 2-hour, 7-minute movie. And 30 minutes of that, we got nothing but backstory, which was mostly dragged out and boring. So, I don't know. They could not figure out any formula that works with any of these Spider-Man spin-off movies. You know, I give them kudos for trying. I really do. But this one was definitely the nail in the coffin for all of this stuff. And if you watch the trailers, you will notice that there was a lot of scenes in the trailers that they didn't even have in the final movie. So you could tell that they were definitely editing a lot of stuff out because maybe they knew ahead of time there's no more going forward with any of this stuff. We're going to have to put a pause in it. If you remember the trailers, there's a part where he's like, he has a torch and he's like in a cave and all that stuff. Like he's looking for something as I knock shit over. You know, maybe that was like a post-credit scene where he's looking for something. He finds something to be revealed in a future movie. Not in this movie. Totally out. And yeah, I know they have stuff in trailers that sometimes don't make the final cut in the movie. But I feel like that was very purposely done in this point. Because there was no post-credit scene, nothing that tied anything to anything. Very much like Venom, Last Dance. That really didn't tie into anything at the end. No hint of what's upcoming. Well, correction. Let me go back on that. Venom, The Last Dance had the teaser that stupid villain that was in the movie for 5 minutes. Oh, he's coming back. And he's going to come back with vengeance and fury. But here, kills his father. Father's dead. Brother's now evil. He's the chameleon. Calypso, oh, they got rid of Ariana quick. After she kills off that villain, you never see her again. They didn't even bother bringing her back at the end. No way. You know, Kraven is disappointed with what his brother turned into. Probably now is going to wander the earth or something. Rhino's dead. The Foreigner is dead. No other threat is left. So what is there to even do in the future of this franchise, of this movie? Nothing. So yeah. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, and I feel like 2 was being generous. I was rewarding Aaron Taylor Johnson for his acting performance, Fred Heschinger for his performance, and Russell Crowe for his performance. Ariana DeBose, wrong casting. She should not be in this movie. She should not be in these type of movies, period. Because it doesn't work. She can't nail the emotions and that sense of excitement and suspense and thrill. You know, even when she was seeing that these guys were coming after her, her reaction was, I kid you not, oh no, I see 5 guys walking in the building. They look like they don't belong here. You better get out of there. Better go. Leave now. Okay. I kid you not. That is basically how it went down. Yeah. It's no surprise that Sony is rethinking their whole strategy moving forward because of something like this. So yeah, 2 out of 5 stars. I cannot recommend this movie to anybody. And I think honestly, the only reason why they can still control these characters is because they hold that license. They hold that Spider-Man rights. And Marvel is being very patient with them. You know? But one mistake that they did also, we'll get into later, is that they decided not to include Spider-Man in anything. And they could have. So yeah. So that was Kraven. Gorilla, I'm sorry. I missed out on a lot of chats. Let me catch up real quick. Yeah, it's been a while. Stuff, creeps up on you. Oh, trust me, I know that. Tell you what, man, character-driven stories are lame as duck. We were all like ooh and ah when we started seeing more of these stories in the early 2000s. But honestly, Quentin said it best in a recent interview. He explains why TV shows aren't memorable and movies are. And he said when a story is character-driven, it's a soap opera. I agree and disagree on a little bit of that stuff. Superhero stories are nothing more than soap operas that take too long between episodes. Backstory is the hallmark of writers who don't know how to tell a story. I think it's a hallmark of I would say this. It's a common mistake that writers do when they don't know how to tell a story and when they don't trust the audience in being able to pick up anything. When they lose trust in the audience and think audiences are dumb, that's when we get movies like Kraven, where you have 30 minutes of backstory. Superhero stories have no weight because nothing has any consequences. Horrible things happen. Then they undo everything and nothing matters. Why even makes these things? That you're speaking mainly of like stuff that we've seen a lot in Marvel and all that stuff like that. But not all superhero movies and stories are like that. It's very easy to generalize them all together. I don't blame you because it feels like all of them are kind of leaning that way, right? But I do feel like there's still a lot of superhero stories that do really well in telling a good story, giving us good characters. I still personally believe that character development is important because for me, yes, spectacle and action sequences are fantastic. But in order for me to really care about anything that's happening, I need to care about the characters. So for me, character development is very important, and there are smart ways to do that. I just said it earlier in the show when I talked about Creature Commandos and how well James Gunn is developing their characters in this ensemble piece. Even though it's a cartoon, we've seen him do it very well with Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy. He finds a way to make us care for these people. I think a lot of writers and these people who are making these movies don't know how to do that well. And like I said, it's mix of not knowing how to do it and not trusting the audience enough. That you don't need 30-minute exposition, backstory in order for us to understand, oh, I get it. Tough dad. Dad wants these kids to be hunters and not be weak pussies, right? One is reluctant. The other one takes on the lead. Big accident happens, blah, blah, blah. Move it forward, right? You don't need it to be doing that for like 30 minutes straight. There's ways to kind of incorporate that in the story if you knew how to write it well. So there you go. Arnold says Stan Lee would turn in his grave if he saw what is happening right now. Yeah, I think if Stan was still alive, he would just be happy that at least these movies are getting seen on the big screen. I think he would just be happy that his characters that he helped create are getting a spotlight. But I think if you sat down with him and really had a real honest conversation, I'm pretty sure he would have some bad things to say about the handling of a lot of these movies and a lot of these stories, So yeah, it's just very disappointing, to be honest with you. It is extremely disappointing. And you could tell and I know I'm like picking on Sony Pictures right now and how they're handling the Spider Universe, but a lot of studios are suffering from this. In a little bit, I'm going to be talking about the new Lord of the Rings movie and how Warner Brothers is also suffering. You can tell that they're very desperate, and they're losing the plot. Everyone here is losing the plot, and they're trying so hard to get money. They're trying so hard to earn box office dollars, but they're not giving us those things that will want us to come out and support these films. And you can see people are tired of Sony mistreating a lot of these characters because nobody went to see Kraven. Nobody. In my theater last night, there was maybe 10 people. You know? So it's just sad to see. Ficon's going to sleep right now. Ficon, have a wonderful evening. I hope to catch you again next week. Continue talking about our Skeleton Crew discussion. Gorilla saying Agatha all along was almost interesting. Then it became grab bag of cliches. What did I expect? Even James Gunn was born in Formula City and graduated from Cookie Cutter High, where generic stories abound. I would debate you on that, because if you actually know James Gunn started his career writing and directing trauma movies. He was always an independent filmmaker, and he was always someone who like scraps, right? So even though he found himself in the Disney house, where things are can be very cookie cutter and all that, he always stood out, in my opinion, above everybody else. So I wouldn't put James Gunn in that same boat at all, in my opinion. Nice cowgirl picture, bro. Hawk to a spin on that thing. Again, I've teamed up with Haley Welch to put together the GEEK Tua meme coin, coming soon. I know I said we were supposed to launch last Friday, but we had some hiccups. You know, she's having a bad time with PR and press right now. So, but I promise you, it will be coming out soon. I guarantee you, it's going to be a lot of fun for you guys and a whole lot of money for me. But yeah. So that's Kraven. The other movies I saw before I get into Lord of the Rings was Interstellar 5555. The special one night only re-release of Daft Punk's anime. Gorilla, I don't know her. I'm just joking on the whole Hawk to a coin and all that. Because I think she's an idiot, and I think she is the pure definition of 15 minutes. If you next year's edition of Merriam-Webster, if you look up the definition of 15 minutes, her face will be officially on that page. So if you don't know, Interstellar 5555 was an anime movie that Daft Punk worked together with legendary anime director. Hold on, let me pull it up because I always have a problem pronouncing his name. Sorry, bear with me. So yeah, directed by Kazuhisa Takenouchi, and was supervised by Leiji Matsumoto. And if you are not familiar with what they have done before, they've done a lot of classic anime shows and anime back in the day. Galaxy 999, Captain Harlock's Space Battleship Yamamoto. So stuff that I personally grew up watching, and I love that anime style. So Daft Punk wanted to do a visual kind of movie or a visual album for their Discovery album when that came out back in, what's it, 2007? 2003. So we never, for a lot of people never got to see the full anime that was produced, because what they did is that they snipped out clips of it to be music videos for some of their single releases. Of course, the famous one being One More Time. And One More Time is one of those hit songs that brings back so many memories to me from back in the day. It came out at the right time when I was at the club, in my youth, and I was hitting the club very frequently every weekend. And I'll never forget this one night. I went to Club Envy here in New York City. It was a very popular club back in the day. And what I loved about that club is that it had two dance halls. One where they did the hip hop and R&B, and one where they did a lot of the techno. We called it techno back in the day. We didn't have EDM. We didn't have, all that kind of shit you call it now. But we called it techno and dance music, right? So I'll never forget, I always found myself in the hip hop and R&B side, doing my thing and all that. And then I heard one more time, bam, 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 bam. And I was like, oh, and I ran to the other side and I just lost my ever loving mind. And it's memories like that that always make me feel like Daft Punk has such a strong presence in my upbringing. One of my biggest regrets is not ever able to see them perform live. Of course, if you don't know, they broke up a couple years ago, right? So we don't know if they're ever going to team up again. I have a Daft Punk photo, professional photo of them hanging on my wall over here. And hopefully when I move into the new space, you'll get to see more of that in the background. And I've loved seeing the music videos of this. So I never had a chance to see the full thing beginning to end in its entirety until I finally got to see it in the theaters. And it's fantastic. It really is. There's no dialogue throughout the whole thing. It's all music based. And it was just straight on visual storytelling. If I were to describe what this movie is, it is a visual album, really. And you just hear the entire Discovery album all throughout with little remixes here and there as you're watching it. But it's so brilliantly animated. And the story is very simple. You have one of the best musical bands in the universe playing a show, and they get kidnapped. And they get kidnapped by a corporate, entity, a guy who wants to steal their likeness and their music and release it as if he created them on planet Earth. And they do that, and then of course they find a way to break out of it and escape and go back and blah 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 and all that stuff. Very simple storyline, and you could tell what's happening as you watch it all throughout. And it's so much fun. All the music on the Discovery album are bangers. I loved hearing the soundtrack. Everything was you could tell was remastered. But I have a problem, and we need to stop this. Before I continue, I just want to make sure I don't miss any of the chats. So, Gorilla saying, "Oh, Pugirl." Jester saying, "What do you mean? My number one podcast is Talk to It. I can't go along without getting talked to it, or I'll fall apart." Well, maybe I should rename the show Geek Tua, and then we'll carry it on from there. Gorilla saying, "I don't know. Cash me if you can manage to build a musical career out of threatening Dr. Phil with violence." The reason why these people do well is because they're spectacles. They create spectacles out of themselves, and they find ways to constantly do that. She was a viral sensation because of something she said. But the minute she opens her mouth and actually talks, there's no substance whatsoever. It's deafening. I feel dumb when I hear her speak. And you could tell, if you go to her YouTube channel right now, the views on her videos are slowly sinking. And ever since this whole Beam scam came out, even more so. So I don't think you're going to hear much of her any further. Unlike the Catch Me If You Can outside girl, she had a crazy personality. Plus, and I hate to say this, she had a lot of simps who thought she was cute already and were waiting for her to grow up. And I hate to say that, but it's very true. So they will follow her and will support her until she eventually goes on OnlyFans. Gorilla saying, "Remember when Matthew Sweet used clips from Cobra anime for..." I do remember that. Not only did he use Cobra, but he also used Loom. I think Loom was her name. Anime Loom. what's her name? Urusei Yasuda. That was the follow-up music video that he did, where he used a lot of clips from that anime in his music video, and I thought that was great. I would not know who Matthew Sweet was if it wasn't for that song, the music video where he used Cobra, which I'll say Cobra is definitely an anime that is very underrated. Not a lot of people watched it. I love it. I have right here a little figure set of Cobra and his ladies and everything. A very, very cool, like, bounty hunter story. So yeah, I totally remember that. So here's my problem with Interstellar 5555 and my problem in general when it comes to remastered content, especially movies. Can we not with the AI anymore? You could tell that AI was so heavily used to make it look so clean that it was very distracting for me. A lot of the characters that you saw in the background looked very much like if I were to plug in descriptions of what that scene should look like, and I plugged it into like an AI generator, like a image generator, those kind of images would come out. It looked kind of distorted and not rough. It's too clean. Movies don't need to look so damn clean, especially anime and animated content from the early 2000s and even way before that. You don't need to make them look so clean. There is a certain level of charm of the roughness of it and of the pure animation behind it. Not everything has to look like it was done through a computer. Not everything has to look so clean. And I noticed myself every time I'm seeing these things happen, I could tell. I was like, oh man, that looks way too clean. AI, AI, AI. It was very distracting. And I had enough of it. It's just, that's why I refuse to buy 4K Blu-rays now. Because of my experience with the original Beetlejuice movie, and I saw how much AI was used to clean up the movie. The first 10 to 15 minutes of the movie threw me out. The minute you see Alec Baldwin almost look like a computer generated character moving across the screen, I was done. I was like, you know what? Thank God the original Blu-ray is included. I popped it in. There it is. Film grain. Oh, remember film grain? It's a real thing. You don't necessarily have to clean it out all the time. I miss that. Not everything has to be clean. And I think the use of AI to remaster and clean up this movie was it was doing a disservice to the content. And it threw me out. So that was my biggest disappointment. Otherwise, it was very fun to finally see on the big screen. I have it on Blu-ray, so of course I know how it is. But it was nice to finally see it on the big screen for the first time. The soundtrack was great. Everyone in attendance enjoyed the soundtrack. They had some extra stuff at the end where they basically showed their music videos, Daft Punk music videos. And it's a great reminder of how many people directed music videos who later became actual movie directors, like Spike Jonze, Michael Condrey. They directed a lot of these Daft Punk videos. And it was really, really cool to see on the big screen with the great sound and everything like that. So I had fun with that. Did I watch the UI remake? I didn't even know there was a remake, Gorilla. Where can I find that if I was interested in checking it out? Let me know. Also, if you're watching live, please don't forget, hit that like button. Would greatly appreciate it if you do that. Having a fun Monday here in Gotham City because it's cloudy and rainy. It's been like that for the last 2 weeks. All right. Let's talk about Lord of the Rings now. And another studio that is having a hard time trying to figure out what to do with the franchise. As if I'm not giving away how I feel about this. High Dive. Oh, okay. I've heard of High Dive. I got to check it out. I definitely do. because it's been a long time since I've seen anything from that property. So I'm very curious to check it out. So Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim is a prequel story. I believe it takes place 200 years prior to the events of the Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson is involved in this because it's Warner Brothers, right? And we already know, there was news that came out that they're working on a set of anthology films that are going to be character-centric. So we're going to get a movie on Gollum. I think we're going to get another movie on Aragorn or something like that. And, we'll see what happens. But seeing this is giving me pause on my anticipation for these movies coming out. The story of this centers around Hera, who is the daughter of Helm Hammerhand, who was one of the big kings of Rohan. He is the one that they named Helm's Deep after. And we get to see basically how his reign was, how it came to an end, and the conflict between all that, and why Hera is a very interesting character that no one talks about. Now, I don't know where they got a lot of this story from, because there were no official stories from J.R.R. Tolkien about this character, about these guys. I'm pretty sure a lot of it was in the Silmarillion. Is that how you pronounce it? Silmarillion? Which is more just like cliff notes of backstory of the Lord of the Rings universe, Middle Earth, and all those things like that. And so we learn a lot about these things, right? Here's what I liked about it. Animation is beautiful. The animation is gorgeous, especially during a lot of the fight scenes. Very, very beautiful animation. They teamed up with a very good animation house, good animation director. I thought it was very well done in that aspect. The voice acting was also very good. A lot of the narration was done by Miranda Otto, who is Éomer. So it was interesting that she's kind of telling this story, given that she was a very strong female presence in Rohan, right? Sorry, not Éomer, Éowyn, right? That's her character's name, right? Is it Éowyn? Let's see. You would think I would know this stuff. Éowyn, yes. Éomer, I think, was her brother's name, I think. But Éowyn. So the narration is done by Éowyn, Miranda Otto. They got her back to voice it, right? So it's interesting to have her be the one telling this story, given that, her role in the whole Middle Earth universe and Rohan. So it kind of just shows you that there's a long line of strong female people in the backstory of Rohan, even though Rohan is mainly ruled and led by strong male presence, right? And don't read too much into that. Let's not say this is woke and stuff like that. That's the story. Take it for what it is. Period. Gorilla has to bounce. It's all good, man. We will see you next time. But I'm glad you came in for today. So hopefully you have a good rest of the day and a good rest of the week. He also said, tell you what, Witcher anime backstory was awesome. I have to see that. I'm so back. I'm so behind in a lot of that stuff. But I will say this, because of the new Watcher trailer, it makes me want to go back and play the games again. Arnold saying, many said that The Lord of the Rings was bad. I must say I liked it some extent. 4 out of 5. Okay, Arnold, I'm glad you liked it. I'll tell you what I think about it in a little bit when I'm done recapping. But Gorilla, enjoy the day. Thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you again soon. So what I liked about this, like I said, animation was fantastic. The voice acting was really great. They got Brian Cox to play Helm Hammerhand, the king, and great voice to have for this character. Really, really cool. It was nice to hear the soundtrack again, even though Howard Shore, they used his soundtrack and they kind of remixed it to fit into this. So it was really nice to hear that. It was nice to see the scenes that we all loved in the original Lord of the Rings movies, like Helm's Deep, to see Rohan and their little town there, their little kingdom. Awesome to see all that stuff, especially some moments like when the movie started, it almost looked like they were showing live action, but it was all animation, right? So it was very, very lifelike. I thought they did a good job there. It was nice to see the Eagles play a part in this. But the one thing and one of the reasons why I don't watch a lot of new anime these days is because a lot of the anime that we get, in my opinion, now this is just my opinion, looks fantastic. The action scenes are fantastically done. Great voice acting. But the story execution is very poor. And there are many moments where I felt extremely bored watching this. And that is a very typical trope that I feel anime, especially movies, go through. Where they have a great idea, great premise, interesting enough characters, fantastic animation, action sequences, voice acting, and soundtrack is all on point. But the execution of the story is poor. Where there are a lot of moments that felt boring to me, that felt dragged out, and I found myself falling asleep in a lot of moments. Not so much to the point where I missed a lot of the story, but I found myself like dozing off because it just felt bleh to me many times. The story itself is interesting, but it doesn't warrant a 2-hour plus animated movie, in my opinion. I feel like the story could have been cut down to an hour. And because of that, I didn't enjoy it as much as I wished I did. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Because I want to reward it for the animation. I want to reward it for the voice acting, for all the good stuff that I mentioned. But the story execution, I thought, was very poorly done. And it makes me wonder what is going to happen with the Lord of the Rings franchise for Warner Brothers. Because remember, we have competing franchises now with Amazon's Rings of Power. And I know a lot of people are poo-pooing on that show. Some are liking it. Some are in the middle, right? But they're still moving forward with that. And Warner Brothers is so desperate for something to work for them to bring in a lot of dollars like the box office, that I'm concerned that we're going to get nothing but bland stuff moving forward. If this is an indication of what's to come, I'm very concerned about this franchise because I loved the Lord of the Rings movies. I can rewatch those 3 movies anytime. Very easily. I love them. The Hobbit, not so much. And I felt like that was already at a time where Peter Jackson was stretched a little bit too thin. And he didn't want to direct them, but he had to because Guillermo del Toro bounced. He dropped out of it. And it was not so. They should have never, ever made it more than 1 movie. The Hobbit should have just been 1, and it would have been great. So they stretched it. And I think that's all studio. That's all Warner Brothers saying, we need to stretch this because we need people to give us more money. We need people to come back to the theater more and more because you did not need. The Hobbit is an easy read. I can sit down and read the Hobbit book probably in a couple of days. You don't need to have it, like, what was it, 2-3 movies? That was absurd. And then now we have this. It should have been only an hour, maybe an hour, 20 minutes, or an hour and a half. But it felt too long, too dragged out, too dull at times. And it makes me wonder what's going to happen when we get the Gollum movie, which again, I don't really care much about Gollum. I feel like we already know much of Gollum that we need to know. When you mix in the stuff that we learned from the original movies, what we learned from The Hobbit, We don't need any more Gollum story. What else are we gonna tell about Gollum? Yeah, I'm excited for Andy Serkis to be directing a movie here and reprising his role as Gollum. But what are you gonna tell? That's gonna be new and exciting. Are you gonna be making up stuff now? Are we veering out of the source material because there isn't any more source material? That's my main concern. And then what are the other stories going to be? Legolas? What is there more to tell about Legolas? About his time with the woodland elves and all that? Are we going to give him a romance arc? And it just makes me wonder, like, should these franchises just be put to bed and just left alone? Warner, if you want to find another one, go find another one. But you're done with the Lord of the Rings stuff. I don't know. I'm curious what all of you think. Because for me, look, I gave Rings of Power a chance. I have not watched a single episode of season 2 yet. Am I going to? Maybe. But I'm not rushing out to go see it. Lord of the Rings for Warner Brothers. I love Peter Jackson and I love what he did with the original movies. Do I have faith that maybe he'll do something cool again in the future? Of course I do. Have I seen anything that indicates that that's the case right now? No. So, what's going to happen? Time will tell. Arnold says there were many points where I would have liked more, but yeah, that is what we get. But it could have been worse. Of course, anything could have been worse. It could have been another Kraven. It could have been another Morbius or a Madam Web, which to this day, I will say this. I still enjoyed Madam Web, but for very different reasons. Not because the movie was great or I liked the story, but because it made me laugh many times. I see Madam Web as a comedy when I know it's not supposed to be. It's a throwback to movie making back in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, and I found it hysterical. And that's how I got my little enjoyment out of that movie. I like Madam Web more than I like Kraven. Call me crazy, but that's just my personal feeling. Is Kraven a better movie than Madam Web? Absolutely. When it comes to, I guess, acting performances and execution in a way. But that's not saying much, given that I gave Madam Web 2 stars, I gave this one 2 stars, and I gave the last Venom movie 1 star. Very low bar to reach here. So yeah, so those are my little reviews of Kraven, Interstellar, Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim. Arnold, I'm glad you got something out of Lord of the Rings. Great thing about movies that we all take things differently, which is fun and all. But yeah, but with all the Kraven and all the stuff out of the way, that leads us to, where is this going to lead Sony with their Spider Universe? Because the rumors are out there right now. They're already saying that the Spider-Verse, as we know it on the Sony Pictures side of things, is coming to an end. Kraven is the last we'll see, because their focus is going to be very, very honed in on Spider-specific movies, Spider-Man specific stories. And we're seeing a lot of that happening right now, where, and as you could see here, the next iteration of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Beyond the Spider-Verse, the third movie in that story, is now getting pushed back. It's moving from 2025 to potentially now 2027, as they're taking a lot of tender loving care on it to continue this story and make sure it works well and it's right. I think this has a lot to do with some of the backlash that they got with the crunch time in order to finish the second Spider-Verse movie. And I think it also tells us that they want to make sure that they knock this out of the park just like they did with the last two. And, you know, they mentioned also that they're putting a lot of focus on the Spider-Man Noir movie with Nicolas Cage. Is it? No, it's a series with Nicolas Cage. Again, very Spider-Man centric, a beloved character from the movie Spider-Verse. So they want to make sure that they do it justice and do it really well. You know, they're also no longer moving as of right now with any other project that they had in the works or in their minds. So if you're expecting to hopefully see more of Kraven, doesn't look like we're going to get any more of that. Venom is done as far as we know it. Morbius was already done. Madam Web, we're not getting it moving forward anymore after that. You know, a lot of focus is shifting because they know that the audience have spoken. The audience has spoken and said that we're tired of these things. What are you guys doing to us? You know, and I have a strong feeling too that Marvel is telling them, you need to calm your ass down with this stuff because it's not working. You know, everything we do and we help when it comes to Spider-Man works. But what are you guys doing? Arnold saying, Madam Web disappointed me because I haven't seen anything from Sydney Sweeney. Special attacks, you know what I... Arnold, you should just watch Euphoria because I hear you'll get as much Sydney Sweeney as you want with that show. You know, whenever they decide to finish season 3 with all the controversy behind that. You know, and I think with all the bad stuff happening with Sony and the Spider-Verse is a lot to do with themselves and how they treat it. There are reports that are coming out now saying that Madam Web was heavily tarnished because of studio interference, that the script was rewritten multiple times leading into the days of when they started shooting the film. Hence why it felt very disjointed, especially when you go from Act 2 to Act 3. Like it felt like you were watching different movies. And I think I even mentioned that when I was like reviewing it back when I saw it. You know, so you have studio interference, you have their own refusal to include Tom Holland in the Venom movies. They could have, especially when we saw the little blip of Venom being sucked into the Tom Holland Marvel universe and then eventually getting sucked back out. But they decided not to do anything with that because they thought the audience wouldn't gel well with the fact knowing that Tom Holland's Spider-Man lives in a different universe than Venom. So where is Spider-Man? Who is the Spider-Man of this universe then? You could have just maybe, I don't know, brought back Andrew Garfield. You know he's down to do it. He said it multiple times. He was so happy to be playing that role again, and he felt like his role was severely cut short. You know, you could have brought him back, made him your Spider-Man in this alternate universe. I guarantee if they ever thought of that, those movies would have done so much better. The reception would have been better. And maybe not necessarily quality of movie would have increased, but at least that feeling that people want to go see these movies because we know we're going to get to see a Spider-Man. And guess what? It happens to be Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, which a lot of people actually really enjoyed. I enjoyed it too, to be honest with you. But Sony kept messing up and messing up. And I honestly, I feel like it's also because of Avi Arad. Because when you look at producer credits for all of these movies, that one name that comes out that is like a death knell to a lot of these comic book movies, Avi Arad, Avi Arad, Avi Arad. Okay, no Arad here. Avi Arad, Avi Arad. And if you remember, I broke down Avi Arad's career in a previous stream. You know, how he was basically CEO of Toy Biz, a toy manufacturer who had a lot of these Marvel licenses. So his main focus is selling toys, and how he approached movies as giant commercials to sell toys. Just like how old school 80s cartoon television was for Saturday mornings and weekdays. How they were basically, Transformers, He-Man, those were meant to sell toys. And he kind of followed that approach when it came to movies. That's why a lot of the movies he touched were terrible. But he wanted to sell toys. Now, they're not making toys out of Venom, Tom Hardy's Venom, or Kraven. So somehow he never broke out of that, but he's still there. And to be honest with you, the only reason why the Venom movies did well is because there are actually people out there who love the Venom character. Because Venom not only became one of the biggest foes of Spider-Man in the comic books, but as a standalone character became a big thing, a big deal. And a lot of people love the Venom character. Morbius, Kraven, Madam Web, they're all tertiary characters in this universe. Maybe Kraven not so much. Like I said, Kraven is also a beloved villain. But look how long it took for us to get a Kraven movie. From 2018 to 2024, that's how long we had to wait. And this whole thing about them doing a Sinister Six movie, which never came into fruition. What happened to Michael Keaton's Vulture? That now got sucked into the whole Venom universe, the whole universe with Morbius. You all remember at the end of Morbius when Michael Keaton showed up and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a doctor," blah, blah, blah. What happened to all of that? This will go down in history as one of the biggest tragic failures of creating a very joint universe for a Marvel character. Well, for Marvel characters, right? When Sony tried to turn the villains into its own universe and to make them look appealing to audiences, when we all know they're supposed to be villainous and they're supposed to be going against Spider-Man, and without Spider-Man showing up in any of the movies. What happened here? It's such a disaster. So what should Sony do moving forward? I think what I hear in the rumors out there, I think that's the right approach. Stop it. Basically, that's the best thing they could do. Stop it. Cut it out. Enough with the villain arcs. Enough with the villain stories. Enough with the villain standalone movies. The audience doesn't care anymore. It's over, Johnny. It's over.
You blew it!
Focus now on Spider-Man. That's the best thing you can do. Focus on the next Spider-Man movie with Marvel. Spider-Man with the next Tom Holland. Focus on Spider-Man Noir with Nicolas Cage. That has promised to do very well, to be very fun, right? Focus on the next Spider-Verse animated movie. You don't need to do any more of these. And I know another reason why they're doing this is because they said, look, we're doing movies. We could still maintain the rights because we're producing a movie, every couple of years. But when you have 1 year with 3 Spider-Verse movies that came out, Madam Web, Venom, Kraven, disaster, decent box office, disaster, tremendous disaster. When before that in 2022, you had another disaster. It became a meme on how bad it was with Morbius. It's time to call it quits. It's over. You got to do movies that people want to see, and people want to see Spider-Man. They don't want to see, God forbid they were going to do like a Lizard movie. God forbid they were planning to do a Doc Ock movie. Could you imagine how bad that could have been? You know, where's Green Goblin in all this? You know, they didn't do a Green Goblin standalone. Is it because Marvel's like, hold on, Doc Ock and Green Goblin, we have to reserve that, you know, for the main Spider-Man movie. You guys can, you know, go ahead, touch the Chameleon, touch Morbius. Those guys are cool. You know, do that. But leave the big guys for, you know, we got plans for these guys. Well, they had a plan with Vulture in it, and look what happened. They're like, you know what? F Vulture. Let's take Vulture and let's throw him into the failing universe. Sorry, Michael Keaton, we love you and all, but we need to make room for more for stuff that makes sense. It's just, it's I've never seen, well, until Star Wars and Disney, a studio treat a license so poorly. It boggles the mind. PDQ's in the house. What's going on? Always great to see you here. Oh, Madam Web made me lose faith in people. Well, you know, you didn't see Venom, The Last Dance. And I'll say this, like I said, you may have heard me say it, but I thought Madam Web was better than Kraven. And I thought Kraven is a better made movie. But I like Madam Web, like I said, for different reasons. I find it as a hysterical comedy. It makes me laugh. Arnold saying it's better than seeing She-Hulk work. Well, that is true too. That is very true too. But I think Sony needs to really, really sit down and do, you know, what Marvel is attempting to do with their movies, what Disney and Lucasfilm are trying to do with Star Wars. They need a reset. Reset, rewind, get rid of Avi Arad. He is like the bad luck charm for a lot of these movies. Get rid of him somehow. I don't know why he still works so closely with Sony. Get rid of him. Get him out of the picture. You know, and really focus on Spider-Man centric movies. If you want to still maintain and do movies with this license, otherwise give it back to Marvel at this point. But they're not going to do that. We know they're not going to, because there's too much money involved in this. You know, when it comes to the video games, they do really well. The animated movie does extremely well, but they're also very well done. You know, they need to refocus. Whatever they were trying to do here was just wrong. You know, and then when we look back in time in the history of failed franchise universes, you know, you have like the Dark Universe with Universal, with all of their monsters and all that. You're going to have this now. Spider-Man and Sony. Sony Pictures with their failed villain Spider-Man Rogues Gallery universe. It doesn't work. It could have worked. It could have been interesting. But you had the wrong people behind it. Too much studio meddling. And too many misses. With the exception of Venom. I still find it fascinating and could be a case study on its own on why Venom appealed so much to a lot of people and why that does really well at the box office. But I really do truly feel it's because there's so many people who love the Venom character. That's just my take on it. And plus it does extremely well internationally for some reason. So we'll see what happens. It'll be really interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years with Sony Pictures and what we're going to be hearing from them when it comes to their Spider-Man franchises. You know, I won't be surprised if one day we hear them finally announce, guess what, Andrew Garfield, you're coming back. You're going to revitalize your Spider-Man role, blah, 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 this and that. And that would be their only way they could continue with what they've tried to set up here with the Venoms, with the Morbius, with Kraven, with Madam Web. Because let's recap all the stuff that's still lingering with what they set up with these movies. All right. And if I spoil things for people, sorry, I'm saving your lives because none of you need to watch any of these movies, honestly. At the end of Morbius, we had Michael Keaton, Vulture, showing up at the end. Hey, I'm looking for a doctor, and blah, 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 and heard about this spider guy. Oh, tell me more. That's where we left that off. Plus, keep in mind, Scorpion is somewhere, right? He's in jail, I think. I don't know if he got sucked into this universe or not, but we got treated to like a Scorpion character, right? So, whatever. End of Madam Web. First, we got a little glimpse of, oh, we're going to call him Peter as he's getting born, as he got birthed in a hospital, right? Oh, but what Peter is that? We don't know. But Madam Web's around doing her Madam Web stuff. With Sydney Sweeney, you got the Spider Ladies. And their whole thing was that they were supposed to like look after Peter Parker and Spider-Man and whatever, whoever's part of the Spider-Man or the Spider family, right? So they're just like in the background watching. Venom Last Dance. They set up that new Venom character, the female, who has like electricity in her. So she's hovering around somewhere. So she survived. Venom is dead. Eddie is in New York now by himself. But then we got that other guy, the Spanish guy that survived, the army guy, who they hinted he's another character or something like that, running around, escaping where the big battle scene happened at the end of that movie. Plus, we still have the symbiote that was left in the MCU proper. So that gives them the right to use that now, right? But for Sony, that's where Venom left off. So there's still a lot of lingering stuff. Now with Kraven. Like I said, at the end of Kraven, you still got Calypso, we believe, running somewhere around in the background. You got his brother, the Chameleon, he could now shape, shift, and do all these things. And then Kraven, of course, is still around. Gonna be doing Kraven things. Rhino's dead, so you could forget about him coming back. But the one who gave him his power is a doctor, unnamed doctor, in New York City that gave the power to Chameleon, to his brother. So who is this doctor? Is this Morbius? Oh, you see how it all ties together? So all of that has been left on the table after the end of all of these movies. So what's going to happen? I bet you not a damn thing. Sorry, Sony, but
You blew it!
so there you go. The only way they could ever save this, like I said, is if they decide to be like, hey, guess what? Andrew Garfield, we're bringing you back. And, you could be our Spider-Man again. And we could do story, because he still looks young. He still looks really good. He could still play Peter Parker. Why not? And then maybe they could start splicing and dicing a lot of these things that they introduced and left on the table. And we could do something out of this. But I'll tell you this, it's not going to make any sense if we ever get a Kraven versus Spider-Man thing, because the way they treated Kraven in his movie, he's supposed to be the good guy. So what? You're going to have like a weird twist where he becomes evil and bad? Or maybe there's like a difference of opinions or point of view that he's going to go toe-to-toe with Spider-Man? I don't know, man. Doesn't make any sense. And I think Sony dug themselves a little hole that they're trying so desperately to climb out of, and they can't. It's tragic. It's very tragic. And if I were to like look at box office numbers here for these movies, I mean, we could do that real quick. You know, just to see, is it worth saving? So first, let's look at Venom, the Venom movies. All right. Now, the Venom movies are the ones that did the best for Sony at the box office. You can see Venom worldwide, almost $1 billion, $856 million. 2018. This was pre-pandemic. So of course, movies were still pulling in big money back then. Then we had 2021. Came out when not a lot of people were going back to the theaters at all. I remember for a lot of people, this is one of the first movies they went back to theaters with. You know, not a lot of theaters were fully open yet either. But Venom Let There Be Carnage worldwide pulled in $501.5 million. Drastic drop from the last one, but you have to understand there's an asterisk. Pandemic year. For a pandemic year, this is an amazing total here overall. You know, as a matter of fact, why don't I make a spreadsheet? It's spreadsheet time. And we're going to put all of these numbers together. So let me just quickly do this. Because this will be fun. At least for me. I hope it'll be fun for you guys. But I think this will be fun. All right. We're going to call this Spunk box office totals. All right. Let's do this. Just so it's easy to go back and forth here. All right. So like I said, first we have Venom, right? Here, let me make this bigger so everyone can see it. So Venom, worldwide, we'll do the worldwide box office totals here. All right, so it did that. Next, we have Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And like I said, Venom are the only movies that did extremely well for these guys. All right. So there. So we have that. The third Venom movie, Last Dance, was the worst performing out of the three at $475 million. But still, not that bad, right? Especially compared to a lot of movies that usually typically come out during the year. And let me just get this here. You know, when you compare it to like all the movies that usually come out in a year, a lot of them would wish or hope they could pull in a worldwide box office total like that for their own movie. So Venom for itself did really well. You're talking about an overall box office total worldwide of $1.8 billion for Sony, right? So for these wins for them, I don't know how still to this day, but for some reason, the Venom movies did extremely well for these guys, even though you started to see, you know, diminishing returns with each iteration. You know. So what else did we get from Sony? We got Morbius. Jesus. I knew it was bad. I had no idea it was this bad. $162 million. And mind you, it only got that much because Sony re-released it in theaters. after they got trolled by the internet. It became a meme, and they got trolled, and for some reason they re-released it in theaters. So Morbius. Now, I should add another column here. So let's do this. This will be title. This will be worldwide BO budget. Let's do that. This will be fun. Do that. Let's highlight this so that it stands out a little bit. Boom. All right. So now budgets are going to be hard to find because not all the time are these things reported. All right. So we'll just do estimates based off what the internet tells us. PDQ saying, can you make it so I unwatch some of these movies? No, I'm good. You can tie into a garbage bag for all our sakes. AKB's here. Showed up just in time for spreadsheets. You sure did. So let's do this. Venom movie budget. All right. So it's giving us The Last Dance. So they're saying budget's 110 to 120 million. So let's just do 120, sake of argument, right? Let's do this. Okay, we'll round it out. So Venom, Let There Be Carnage, budget 110. So you notice that there's like a trend here, right? There Be Carnage costing 110 million. Oops, forgot 10. Okay. Venom 2018 budget. All right, so this one looks like it's 116 million. All right. All right. So you can see just here, just quick look at everything, that the box office totals for what Venom pulled in based on how much it cost. Plus, you have to think about marketing costs and all those things like that. They made money back for sure on these movies. This is where it gets now tricky. Morbius. They're saying the budget for Morbius was around $75 to $83 million. So let's just round it up. 83 million, okay? Now you said, oh, yeah, they pulled in 162 million, so they must have made money. Not necessarily. Because budget doesn't always reflect the amount of money they spent on marketing, plus whatever back-end deals they have with the performers. You know, anything that ties into what they have to pay, sometimes the theater chains, you know. So in order for Morbius to really be profitable, they probably would have had to have made 200, 220, 250 million dollars. So I would say here, maybe they broke even, maybe. Right? Now let's go Madam Web. They're saying Madam Web cost them 80 million, not including marketing. However, some say the budget may have been closer to 120 due to reshoots, re-edits, and delays. Marketing was expected to cost an additional 100 to 150 million dollars. See what I mean when it comes to marketing budgets and all that? And they were marketing the shit out of Madam Web. They really were. They were like, I believe there was like Coke cans in certain places and just endless YouTube stuff. It's insane the amount of money they spent on the marketing for this. Plus the press tour that these girls went on, because look, Sydney Sweeney is a hot item right now. Dakota Johnson's also pretty hot out there. You know, a lot of marketing money went into a lot of this stuff. You know, we maybe didn't see as much with Morbius because still you're dealing with pandemic years and all that. But I'll just say, for this one, I'll leave it to 80 million, but we have to keep it in mind on how much marketing and everything costs. Okay? Now let's see. How much did Madam Web do? It didn't even make its marketing budget back. Madam Web worldwide did $100.2 million. This was a tragic disaster for Sony. And this was this year. Beginning of this year. We got that. Then, of course, yeah, Venom Last Dance came in afterwards. Kind of did enough to recuperate some of that. But we don't know, again, the marketing costs for Venom Last Dance. Because if you saw the marketing for this too, they had installations in certain places. They had crazy, crazy press, especially internationally for them. Maybe if I look it up, I can see. Marketing budget for Venom The Last Dance. Look at that. Estimated to be around $75 to $100 million. So if you were to add $100 million to this total, 220 for 475 in return, maybe they did okay, but still not a good sign. Now let's do Kraven. Kraven the Hunter, $110 to $130 million budget. So let's do 130. Because remember, we always have to keep in mind marketing budgets. Now, if the trend that we've been seeing is $100 million for marketing, you know they spent the same for Kraven. They were pushing the shit out of this movie. You could see it online, on YouTube, on TV, tie-ins, all those things. Very much like what they did with Madam Web. And as we went through earlier, as of right now, Kraven worldwide, $26 million. It's over, Sony. Stop it now. Stop the bleeding. Stop the bleeding. No one gives a shit anymore about this stuff. It ain't working. Ain't working. And these two came out in the same year. $126.2 million so far of the combined box office for Madam Web and Kraven out of $210 million budget. Not including marketing costs, which with a combined total of maybe $200 million worth of marketing budget. It's over, Johnny. That's it. It's done. Stop it. Stop the bleeding. Get back to the writer's room. Get back to the boardroom and say, we need to figure this stuff out. And based on the rumors, some of the news headlines I read earlier, that I shared here on the stream, it looks like that's what they're trying to do now. The next Spider-Verse movie, 2026, 2027. Make it perfect. And not suffer from crunch, which was a lot of the backlash they got from the last movie. Spider-Noir with Nicolas Cage show. Put a lot of focus, make sure that that is the show that everyone was hoping for. It's a beloved character. The next Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. Work with Marvel very closely, put a lot of focus on that. And stop it with these. Keep in mind, Venom Last Dance, Madam Web, and Kraven all came out this year. If we were to add the full totals for all three, $601.6 million out of a combined budget of $330 plus $100 million each for marketing. So $630 million estimate. Math don't math. If I was, part of the board, if I was like part of Sony Pictures right now, I'd be furious. First of all, I would have said, you guys are approaching this thing the wrong way ever since the beginning. But now, with the data in, and people are speaking out, no one went to go see Kraven. It's over. That's it. Done deal. And it sucks. I don't like, reporting on failures and studios hemorrhaging money and franchises suffering. I don't like doing that stuff because I'm a movie fan. I love movies. And when studios suffer like this, it could potentially prevent other things from happening. But what do you expect when you have a mismanaged property? And like I said, we're seeing it now all across the board. Sony with Spider-Man, Disney and Lucasfilm with Star Wars, Disney and Marvel with the Marvel Universe right now. A lot of these franchises are suffering. And it's not so much that push, meaning throw money, or push content out there. It can't be that anymore. We need the quality back, or some semblance of quality. Because if you want this money-making machine to keep going, you got to give people a reason to want to spend their hard-earned money for. And right now, they're not given any reason whatsoever to want to spend money for a lot of these things when the return is so piss poor. So piss poor. So that's it. Curious to hear what your takes are on all this stuff, what you feel about my takes on it. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, whether you're watching live now or on replay, on demand. All right. I have already exceeded my 2-hour limit, but there are two stories. One in particular that I did promise Jester that I was going to cover. A news item that was dropped, I believe over the weekend. Let's see, when was this dropped? It was on Friday. And that is on Disney Plus. They are bringing back Malcolm in the Middle. There's a revival of Malcolm in the Middle set at Disney Plus with Frankie Muniz, Bryan Cranston, and Jane Krasmarek. I think that's how you pronounce her name. All set to return. And if you want a reminder of how they look like now, here you go. So obviously everyone's going to be much older. Malcolm in the Middle is one of those shows that I remember watching back in the day. I never watched it every week, but every now and then I will catch episodes here and there. And I thought it was cute. I thought it was a very charming show, very quirky, very much a product of its time. In the 90s, it had a lot of that vibe going on for it. Great opening. title sequence that a lot of people remember, you know. And it just goes to show you once again, nostalgia is always going to be around no matter what. We've gone through a lot of the 80s nostalgia wave. And you can now seeing the wave switching to now to 90s. And now we're starting to go and revisit a lot of stuff from the 90s, right? And this is another attempt to do so. So the new iteration of the series hails from original series creator Linwood Boomer, with original stars Frankie Muniz, Bryan Cranston, and Jane set to reprise their roles. Disney branded television has ordered 4 new episodes of the beloved sitcom. No premiere dates yet set. So it's going to be a limited series. You know, maybe it's just like a, hey, let's look at how these people are, 30 years from now, 20 years from now, right? Per the official logline, Malcolm and his daughter, so Malcolm is married with a child, are drawn into the family's chaos when Hal, his dad, and his mom, Lois, demand his presence for their 40th wedding anniversary party. Malcolm in the Middle is a landmark sitcom that captured the essence of family life with humor, heart, and relatability, said A.O. Davis, president of Disney Brand and Television. It's hilarious and heartfelt portrayal of lovably chaotic family resonated with audience of all ages, and we're so excited to welcome the original cast back to bring that magic to life again. With Linwood Boomer and the creative team at the helm, these new episodes will have all the laughs, pranks, and mayhem fans loved, along with a few surprises that remind us why this show is so timeless. So, yeah, this originally came out in the 2006. So I vividly remember it because of it captured still like that kind of flow from the late 90s into the 2000s where everything was very skater boyish, right? Kind of punk rockish, but in a new sense. This is the Limp Bizkit years and all that stuff, you know, when things were starting to get a little raw. We got our American Pies and all that. So it definitely was very fun to watch, you know, quick edits and kind of breaking over the fourth walls and all that. You know, it was very much a product of the time. Are they going to maintain that same style to it? Maybe. We'll wait and see. My big question is, where is his brother? Where is his younger brother? And he has an older brother too, right? So are they coming back? That's going to be very, very interesting to see if they bring them back too, and really what's going to happen there with everything else. I think a lot of people also don't remember that this is where Bryan Cranston first came into prominence, was through this show. Excuse me. As Malcolm's dad. Of course, Bryan Cranston is better well known for Breaking Bad and his amazing performance on there, but you know, a lot of people forget that Bryan Cranston started his career more in like comic roots, in comedy. So I don't know, am I excited to see this? Not quite. It wasn't something that I was hoping that would ever happen. Again, there's a lot of things that happened that I never thought of that would happen. But now that it is happening, I may be intrigued to catch it. I may be intrigued to check it out, but I wouldn't say it's like on the top of my list. Plus, a lot of you already know how far behind I get on TV. You know, I find myself already struggling with trying to catch up with a lot of the stuff that came out recently. Still haven't seen Cobra Kai's new season or part of the last season. I still haven't watched The Penguin. I never watched Agatha All Along yet, even though I'm hearing good things about it, despite, you know, maybe how it ended or whatever the case is. Dune Prophecy, I love the movies, haven't watched the show yet because it's just too much right now. So we'll see what happens. But it is very interesting to see that this is a thing that's really truly happening. I won't be surprised, again, as we are now riding the new nostalgic wave of 90s, early 2000s. Look, we're getting a freaking Happy Gilmore 2. That should already say a lot. So, you know, don't be surprised if we see a new wave of reboots, revisits of some of the classic shows, movies that we saw late 90s, early 2000s. Because that is, if you think about it, nostalgia hits people at a certain age. I feel like when people reach their 30s, going into their 40s, we reminisce a lot about what we loved when we grew up. In my case, a lot of the nostalgia came from the 80s. When it comes to cartoons like Transformers, G.I. Joe, when it comes to video games, like anything from the Nintendo era, going into like the Super Nintendo era, Genesis, we have fond memories of a lot of that stuff. Nowadays, we're seeing a resurgence of Nintendo 64 and that generation now getting the nostalgic feel. So everything that generation remembered as a kid growing up, that is their new thing. That is the thing that they would love to revisit, and they would love to recapture the memories and the excitement for a lot of that stuff right now. So don't be surprised if we get more and more of all of that coming soon, because that is the new wave of nostalgia that is running wild right now out in the streets. So yeah. So I think with that being said, I think, given that the show ran a little long today, we'll call it for today. Again, big shout out and thank you to everyone who has tuned in. Like I said it earlier, I do this because I actually love the community here. I love interacting with a lot of you guys. So big shout out to AKB, PDQ, Arnold, Gorilla Fantasy was here earlier, Jester, Ficon. Huge shout out to you guys. Kevin Davis, of course, as always, with your stats and predictions. Huge shout out to all you guys. For those of you who were remaining silent in the background and just watching, love you equally as well. Do me a quick favor, hit that like button before you leave today. Would greatly appreciate it. Arnold, love you too. I hope all of you enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. I will catch you next Monday before Christmas. Get ready. I can't believe we're already at that time. But until then, don't forget to tip your waitress and your bartender. Turn your phones off at the movie theaters. I will catch you next time. Stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. Peace out, y'all. Bye-bye.